Today's show is going to be a little different. I'd like to introduce you to somebody.
My name is Jason. I'm autistic.
How old are you?
I'm 7.
Favorite animals?
Giraffe. Favorite animals. He's a giraffe. Snail.
Your dad's a giraffe?
Snail.
Snail.
Horse.
Horse.
Cow.
Pig.
Horned sheep.
Okapi.
Lamps.
Whale.
Horse.
Fish.
Cow.
Snake.
Duck.
I'm out.
Pig. I love animals.
Do you like dogs?
Yes, we love dogs.
Say, what you want to know about autism?
What should I know autism?
Jason's my nephew, and he's autistic. Up until about 18 months old, he was happy, affectionate, getting into everything, and learning to talk. Then he started to gradually change. He made less eye contact, he played alone more, and he quit talking. By the time he was 2.5 years old, Jason was very different. He screamed and thrashed around uncontrollably. He didn't seem to hear when his family spoke to him, and he'd back into a corner, looking at the floor, repetitively twisting the hem of his shirt, which is not normal behavior for a 2.5-year-old, in case you're wondering. For 6 months, my brother and his wife hunted for the cause of his behavior. Autism was initially ruled out because Jason wasn't demonstrating the classic signs. He didn't flap his hands or have any of the other repetitive motion behaviors. He still wanted to be held and hugged and kissed, and while he didn't play with the other children, he still liked being in the same room as them. Recent headlines point to an autism epidemic. Since the 1990s, the number of people diagnosed as autistic has exploded. It's true, but it's not an epidemic. You see, autism is not like Down syndrome. It's actually an umbrella for multiple disorders and conditions. Sometimes it's referred to as the autistic spectrum, and as that umbrella is getting larger and larger, more and more communication disorders and learning disabilities are being labeled and relabeled as autistic. When he turned 3, Jason was diagnosed as autistic spectrum because he fit under the autism umbrella of related pervasive developmental disorders. People want to know where autism is coming from. There's been a lot of noise that autism is the result of governmental vaccination programs, but it seems unlikely. Several independent studies have been done that show no correlation between infant vaccinations and autism. So what's causing it? There are lots of theories and lots of tests still being done, but nobody really knows. And it may be difficult to narrow down. After all, autism is a broad range of developmental disorders. At the end of last school year, Jason was tested for placement, and when my brother went to the meeting with the specialist, they told him that Jason's score showed he was mentally retarded. I've read that up to 75% of people with autism are labeled that way. It's a good thing the camera guy doesn't believe in tests, because actually, Jason's quite smart.
Hooray for Jason!
When he was much younger, he taught himself how to count, forwards and backwards. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10. And recently we discovered he knows how to read, sounding out words he's never seen before.
I can read.
Sing ABC.
And bird, cat, dog, elephant, fox, giraffe, horse in the air, guava, jungle, kangaroo, lion, mouse, not the octopus, pig, and I was not snake. Tornado and babbit, foot your way, XFA sharp, zebra. Now, ABCs. Next time for one, you sing with me.
Very good. That was like the animal ABCs.
It was.
Wow. It also became obvious early on that Jason learns differently. He'd make no progress at all, and then one day something would just snap, and he'd be amazing at it. He loves animals, and he'd have people draw pictures for him, pictures of birds and giraffes and snakes. And then one day, my brother walked outside, and the patio was covered with elaborate animal drawings. Ears, eyes, mouths, hooves. We'd never seen him do it. Never even seen him draw an animal. All he'd do was scribble. Low IQ? No, just different. Besides, when communication is the problem, how effective do you think an IQ test is really going to be? I think if I ignored the tester and just did whatever I wanted to, I'd score pretty low too. Recent studies have shown that autistic brains are mapped very differently from ours, and that brain mapping may be part of the reason why some people who are autistic are also savants. Communication just isn't the same with Jason as it is with other people. Sometimes he understands me perfectly, and sometimes we just don't quite connect. Say, I am 7 years old. I say, how old are you? And you say, I am 7 years old. Go, look at the camera. How old are you?
Cheese.
Cheese. One of the hotbed issues right now is early intervention. People are screaming for earlier testing and therapy, and it makes sense seeing how the brain develops the most in the first 3 years. Unfortunately, that's also when autism develops, and the signs that it's coming on are often difficult to isolate. Dr. Stanley Greenspan, a leading researcher in autism, says two major mistakes are frequently made in early intervention. Number one, taking a minimalist approach which doesn't provide the family enough team support, and number two, overlooking the family dynamics to such a degree that early intervention becomes not a support to the family, but another source of familial stress. Intervention has to consider the well-being of the family as paramount and avoid the temptation of viewing the child as if he or she existed in isolation. Now this show, like all the others, isn't meant to be all-encompassing, and while Jason has autism, he isn't as severely affected as some of his peers. Jason's behavior may be different, even bizarre, but he's not dumb.
I'm smart.
His developmental disorder is by no means a measure of his capacity or his intelligence, and that's something you ought to know.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I love you. Look in the dark at sea. Popcorn pop in the keep caught tree. Sing on to the hot surprise. Possum hot me on my eyes. I get your arm run the free head just a popcorn ha hand yourself more sweep. You are the baby so bursting to me. Popcorn pop me and be peep pop tree.